Is Ben here? Ben's here. How are you doing, Ben?
I'm good. How are you?
Baruch Hashem. So Rabbi Wagner had to uh, do something, and so he's was going to be a little late. So we postponed this, and I expect him to drop in any second now.
Okay.
Um, so there is a Jewish tradition of making a siyum, which is a celebration at the end of any uh, large undertaking of learning. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, at the end of every tractate, people will make a siyum. Um, Famously, Rabbi Shlomo Yehuda Be'eri, the Yanuka, makes a siyum on, I believe, he does the Zohar every Lag BaOmer, and then he does what he calls Kol HaTorah Kula, which is all of Tanakh, Shulchan Aruch, both Talmuds, and the Zohar every year on his birthday. Um, which that's a lot. I mean, just doing the Talmud every year. There are, I mean, I would say probably Poskim tends to do something like that every year. Not many rabbis are Poskim, but
Yeah,
yeah,
it's nonstop. It's just nonstop.
it's nonstop. It is. It's absolutely nonstop. Anyways, for the lesser ones of us, we also make siyums on things like finishing Tanya. And so Yud Tet Kislev, the 19th of Kislev, which is a Chabad celebration, we refer to as the New Year for Hasidut, which is when Chabad, so Chabad Hasidim um, will are supposed to, many of them do, finish Tanya every year,
Mm-hmm.
and the cycle begins and ends on the 19th of Kislev. I think that's also when most Chabad synagogues actually do their Chalukat Hashas, which
Mm-hmm.
is when, as a community, they decide to they decide who's going to do which part of the Talmud. Chabad doesn't do Daf Yomi as much as other communities
Yeah.
do, and so they will divide up the. Good question, Bob. It's almost like Bob is setting us up. Um, so yes, we it took us what, almost 2 years?
Almost 2 years. I think a year and 9 months or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And now I'm actually doing it, or I'm starting. We'll see if we're gonna continue doing it. But I'm doing the Tanya with friends, and I'm
Nice.
using Steinsaltz.
Steinsaltz, Tanya. Yeah, I've heard there's all kinds of new translations of Tanya coming out all the time.
I mean Chabad, so the Chabad.org has one, right? So, or he's
Yeah.
going to have. So
So, what is Tanya? Do you want to take that, Ben, or should I take that?
um I should probably take it just because I finished it. I don't know if I could do a good job. I did not prepare for this in any way. But what is the Tanya? Let me read this. What is the Tanya? Tanya is a book that attempts to help individuals to better understand how to everything, connect their goals, their what is required of them with the beauty of life and the beauty of the connection to God, and how that all fits together, and how these things are not cold things that we do and should have no connection to. We just do them coldly. These are things that operate in the world and have an effect on us, on others, and on not only on this world but on worlds beyond us. Something like that.
Something like that, yeah. So, so Tanya was written by Rabbi Shner Zalman of Liadi about 250 years ago.
Hmm.
He is the Hasidic movement started with Rabbi Israel Baal Shem Tov about 300 years ago, and Israel Baal Shem Tov had several students, but his main student was Rabbi Dov Ber of Mizrich. Um, correct. Obedience without relationship isn't obedience. And so Rabbi Dov Ber, also known as the Magid of Mizrich, had many students. And when he died, there several of his students spread out to different places and established different Hasidic courts they're usually referred to. Um, and one of those was Rabbi Shner Zalman of Liadi, who was actually his youngest student. And so he founded what is known as Chabad Hasidut. And Chabad is an acronym of the three intellectual faculties of the Sfirot, Chokhmah, Binah, Da'at. Wisdom, understanding, and knowledge is how they're usually translated. And his magnum opus, I mean, his two great works are referred to as Shulchan Aruch Harav, which is a halachic work, a work of Jewish law, which is very prominent even outside Chabad circles to this day. And the other one is what's referred to as Tanya. The actual title is Likutei Amarim, which means collected sayings, and there are many books named by that. That's why it's not referred to usually as Likutei Amarim. And Sefer Shel Beinonim, which means a guide for intermediate people.
Hmm.
You might even say normal people. And he wrote it because many people were asking him for advice because he wanted to expound on the basic teachings of Hasidut, which Hasidic Judaism integrates the mystical dimensions with the rest of Judaism. It was a revivalist movement. And he wrote the first part as a sort of guide for people to understand, especially people who may feel overwhelmed by the fact that they are not tzaddikim, they are not incredibly saintly people, and explains to them that even if you are not the saintliest of people, actually that may be your part in the world of simply being a little bit better than of waging the battle, right? It's kafya ve'it hafcha, right? Which means struggling and converting, right? To become a better person, to wage the battle. Rabbi Wagner,
I'm so sorry I'm late.
we are glad to have you. So Rabbi Wagner, despite being only 2 years older than me, has for the past 24 years been my rabbi. And don't blame him. It's not his fault. And so when we finished, we was it last week, 2 weeks ago? We finally got through the entirety of Tanya. I thought I would invite Rabbi Wagner to celebrate with us, speak some words. We had somebody ask, "What is Tanya?" We were trying to explain what Tanya is. So take it away, Rabbi.
Oh boy, putting me right on the hot seat.
Yeah.
All right. What is Tanya? Tanya is the fundamental work of Chabad Hasidism. Essentially, what it tries to do, what it does, is distill spirituality, distill godliness, something that is by nature intangible and undefinable and unrelatable, but bring it into an organized, structured system of, call it, spiritual psychology and philosophy that makes it accessible and possible for everybody to actually understand the mystical aspects of Torah, and to understand the nature of godliness, if you will, as it relates to us as human beings in a way that impacts our lives, in a way that translates into a personal spiritual development.
So
that would be my definition, but let's hear yours. You just finished it.
we both actually tried to give one. Rabbi, so what exactly are you supposed to do? First of all, Yutes Kislev is coming up, and would like you to explain the importance of that and stuff. But also, we're trying to decide what we will do next. We were talking about Derech Mitzvotecha. What else was I going to ask you? I was going to ask you something else, but you could start with those. Oh, what exactly, like, what exactly does a Siyum celebration for Tanya look like? Like, what? I didn't, like, there's no Hadron, so what exactly do we do?
Well, so the actual meaning of I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to start at the end and go backwards, even though the Mishnah says some unfriendly things about people who do that. But the actual meaning of the word hadron is to repeat. Mm-hmm. In other words, the way you conclude any part of Torah is by reading the conclusion and going back immediately again to the beginning, showing the infinite cycle of how there's always more to learn. You're never finished with something. You never completed it, but rather hadran alach, I will return to you. So the appropriate way, there might not be a formal thing to say, but the most appropriate thing is to learn the ending, the last little bit, and immediately go back to the beginning and start again from the beginning. Now that relates.
I was going to ask you also, like, ending with Zul Leomat Zu, like that. I wasn't expecting it to be that Ze Leomat Ze. I was expecting it to be a little bit more, I don't know, joyful than ending with something like that. So you're going to have to explain that as well. But go ahead.
All right. Well, I'll do my best. But before that, it is the season because, as you said, Yutes Kislev is coming up. What is Yutes Kislev? So first, the historical background of the day. Yutes Kislev, the 19th of Kislev, is the anniversary of the passing of the Maggid of Mezrich, the student and successor of the Baal Shem Tov. So really one of the key figures in the development of Chassidus HaKlalis, of the Chassidic movement as a whole, not specific to Chabad, but the Chassidic movement as a whole. Before he passed away, he said a statement to each of his students who were there, to each of his primary students, many of which were not fully understood at that time. Many seemed esoteric or prophetic. And to the Alter Rebbe, he said, "Das ist unser Yom Tov, today is our holiday." Right? He referred to Yutes Kislev the day as he's about to pass away. He said, "This is our holiday." What did that mean? This is our holiday. So years later, and here actually the printing of the Tanya plays a role. But years later, there's the second aspect of Yutes Kislev, which is that it's the day that the Alter Rebbe is released from prison. So let's back up on that a little bit. Okay, the year is Tavkuf Nun Tes, which corresponds to what, 1808, I suppose, something like that. So 2 years before that, in Tavkuf Nun Zayin in 1806, winter of 1806, the Alter Rebbe concludes the book Tanya. He's been teaching these mamarim. He taught the mamarim most of the mamarim that are contained within it 20 years earlier, and finished it also this week on the 10th of Kislev in the year Tavkuf Lamed Daled. So that would be 1774, I believe. But yeah, the translation of the years is always, I just hope I'm doing the math right, but maybe if I'm off, somebody will forgive me. Look it up, right? But he had spent 4 years saying mamarim, saying Hasidic discourses that contain the themes that would later be recorded in the book of Tanya, and concluded that during this month of Kislev. He then spent almost 20 years working on putting together the book, as it were. In other words, just as one example, there's a story that's told that there was a time that the Hasidim, during that period, that the Hasidim noticed that the Alter Rebbe was very, very withdrawn for several weeks, seemed very serious and lost about something. And at some point, the Alter Rebbe's brother, Rabbi Yehuda Leib, went into the Alter Rebbe's office, and the Alter Rebbe told him, I don't know if he asked, what are you busy with or whatever. The Alter Rebbe told him, and I'm trying to remember exactly how long he said. I believe he said, it's already 6 weeks, if I remember correctly. He said, it's already 6 weeks that I'm trying to decide in a particular place in Tanya if to include a vav or not, to include the connecting letter saying and. I believe about Reishis HaAveda, Ikra v'Sharsha. He was trying to decide if to write the beginning of Avoda, of divine service, Ikra, its fundamental principle, v'Sharsha and its root, or V'Ikra v'Sharsha and its fundamental principle and its roots, and is the mitzvah of Avas Hashem, the mitzvah of loving Hashem. And in order to do that, he spent 6 weeks, because as he told his brother, I went through the entire Tanya, what it would be with the Vav and what it would be without the Vav. In other words, even something that seems so whatever, we read it, we don't even necessarily pay attention. In fact, in the Rebbe's glosses on Tanya, the Rebbe prepared a commentary on much of Tanya that he did not end up publishing. It was found together with the Rishimos, with the other writings of the Rebbe that he had not made public after his passing in his office. And they published it later on. So in the Rebbe's commentary on Tanya, he actually gives explanation for almost every instance where the Alter Rebbe says chulu or vichulu, where he says etc. with a vav or without a vav. And the Rebbe shows that basically where he says chulu, it means that the rest, there's more to the statement, and you need to know the rest of the statement, but it's not really directly relevant to the subject matter at hand. Whereas where he writes vichulu, etc. with a vav, that means the rest of the statement is actually relevant to understanding what is being said here, and only by reading what's the part that wasn't quoted will you have a full understanding of the point that the Alter Rebbe is trying to make. So the Alter Rebbe put intense focus and dedication into his preparation of the book of Tanya. That's part of why it's known among Chabad Hasidim as the Torah Shebeksav, as the written Torah, as it were, of Hasidus Chabad, of Chabad Hasidism, because like the Chumash, we see every letter is precise. There's 53 chapters in the first section of Tanya, corresponding to the 53 portions, parshias of the Torah. It's the first text that you study, generally speaking, of Hasidic philosophy, but yet no matter how many times you go back to it, you keep on finding more and more depth, etc. So 20 years or so the Alter Rebbe spent on preparing this book for print, and on determining exactly what should be included and how. And in the year Tavkuf Nun Zayin, in the year, again, that would be 1806, I believe, he sent it to the printing houses in Vilna. He gave them instruction to be very careful not to allow any mistakes. The basic reason for the printing of the Tanya was the main reason. Until then, it had been disseminated as little booklets that were manuscripts copied by individuals. But the opponents of Hasidism decided to intentionally introduce, first of all, there were mistakes made as people copy. Naturally, sometimes they make mistakes. And in addition to that, some of the opponents of Hasidism wanted to show that's the Hasidic works, that the Hasidic texts are heretical. So they intentionally introduced mistakes into copies. They put out falsified copies that therefore created all kinds of questions and concerns. So because of these two issues, the Alter Rebbe finally agreed, after much urging by his colleagues and his students, agreed to publish the work of Tanya. I can go. Sorry, I keep on thinking of tangents to go off on, and I'm trying to avoid them. So trying to stick to the point.
Tangents is actually it's part of our process.
Yeah, we if you actually were to listen to us, we went on a lot of tangents.
But now I'm concerned because I don't know if we paid as much attention to the favs as we should have.
We definitely did not pay as much attention to the favs as we should have.
That'll be for the next time, for the next round. So, but when the Alter Rebbe finally sent it to print, he actually asked, he said they should be very careful in being precise, but he asked them to make every effort to try to get the books back, the printed books back on time for Yutes Kislev, for the 19th of Kislev, which at the time, again, this is before his arrest and liberation, so at the time is the anniversary of the passing of his Rebbe, the Maggid Mezerich.
And that's Friday.
What? That will be this Friday this year, yes. They ended up being delayed. They did not come on time. They only got to Liozna, where he was at the time, on the, I believe it was the fifth night of Hanukkah. Either the second night of Hanukkah or the fifth night of Hanukkah. I'm forgetting right now. So, and the Alter Rebbe, when they were delayed, he seemed very upset. He seemed to feel like something just changed. Something happened. When they finally got there, right? So they very quickly began to be disseminated around the world, around the Jewish world at the time, and to have a big effect. There was a lot of hesitation in the early Hasidic movements about publicizing the secrets of the Torah, making them so accessible. Right nowadays, we don't really relate to that. You have on your background right here God's names and Yud Kei Vav Kei and so on. In Sephardic lands, there were Kameyas, and those things were fairly common. In Ashkenazic lands, the study of Kabbalah was treated with a lot of trepidation, and making them so easily accessible and available was seen as really not just in the physical world, but actually spiritually was seen as making a big change, almost like the original printing of the oral or recording of the oral tradition of the Torah, the Mishnah, later the Gemara. That each step was approached with a lot of trepidation as really changing something in the very nature of the spiritual makeup of our world. So when Tanya, shortly after the Tanya was printed, the opposition to Hasidism reached a new heights, a new peak, and as part of that, in just a couple of years later, the opponents, or less than that, even a year and a half later, basically, the opponents of some of the opponents of Hasidism prepared a libel against the Alter Rebbe, claiming that he's distorting Judaism, claiming that he's rebelling against the Tsar, that he's planning a Jewish kingdom, that he's supporting the Tsar's enemies in Israel, that he's planning to become the king of the Jews, all kinds of things like that. And this libel was taken very seriously by the Tsarist government, so much so that on Chol HaMoed of Sukkot, in 1808, they sent officers to arrest the Alter Rebbe, to bring him to St. Petersburg as a traitor to the crown. There was in those days there was a special black wagon they used for traitors. That basically meant that you were going in a very bad direction and that your prospects were not very good. And they sent that to bring the Alter Rebbe to Petersburg. When they first came during Sukkot, the Alter Rebbe hid and sort of delayed it. But after Sukkot, when they came again on Isru Chag, he agreed to go with them. He ended up spending 53 days in jail. And he saw those 53 days as corresponding to the 53 chapters of the Tanya, sort of the suffering he had to go through for having made these divine secrets so easily accessible. That was paying the price, as it were, for publishing the Tanya, for making it available. And during the time that the Alter Rebbe was in prison, one of the stories that's told, that he told over later, he said that every day when he was in prison, the Baal Shem Tov and the Magid, his successor his predecessor and his predecessor's predecessor, right? His Rebbe and his Rebbe's Rebbe would appear to him, would come to visit him. Obviously, this is after their passing, but. Interesting side little anecdotes. A chassid came years later to the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Rebbe, and told him that he had visited in the cell that the Alter Rebbe was held in the Petropavlovsk fortress in the prison in Petersburg. And the Rebbe Rashab asked him, "How big is it? Is it big enough for 3 people to stand?" He said yes. In other words, the Rebbe Rashab understood that story not as some spiritual vision or manifestation, but that they were manifest in a body. As in Jewish tradition, there's a difference. Jewish mystical tradition, there's a difference between Eliyahu Navi being manifest in a physical body or appearing just in a vision, in a dream, and so on. So the Rebbe Rashab asked him about the size of the cell because he understood the story as that the Baal Shem Tov and Magid sort of were physically present there with the Alter Rebbe. In any event, the Alter Rebbe asks his teachers, "Why am I here? Why is all this happening? Right? I'm trying to teach. I'm trying to spread Chassidus, and here I'm going through such tremendous suffering." And the response that he got from his teachers was, "This is the punishment, as it were, because there's a kitrug, there's a prosecution in the heavens, claiming that you're making the secrets of Torah too easily accessible." Right? Saying that you've gone too far, as it were. You've crossed a line, and you've taken the precious jewel that's been hidden in the king's treasure houses for so many generations, and made it so easily accessible to anybody that wants to pick it up. So Alter Rebbe said, "If that's the case, when I get out, should I stop?" So they responded to him, "No. When you get out of here, that'll be the sign that you've been vindicated above, that the movement of Chassidus has been vindicated above in the heavens, and therefore that'll be your sign not only to continue, but to continue to a much greater extent." And in fact, that's what happened on the 19th of Kislev. So that's December 1808. The Alter Rebbe is released from prison miraculously. There's all kinds of stories that happened while he was there with various officials and with the Tsar himself, how he impressed them, how he responded to their interrogations, and so on. On the 19th of Kislev, he's released. He actually was first brought to, they asked him where he wanted to be brought. In those days, there was the Pale of Settlement, right? I believe already. Mm-hmm. That didn't come late. So there were only a few Jews that lived in the capital city. So there was one chassid that lived in the capital city. The Alter Rebbe asked to be brought to his house. But the chassid lived upstairs, and downstairs lived the Misnagid, an opponent of Chassidus. And by mistake, they brought him to the Misnagid's house. So he actually, the opponents then spent the next 3 hours haranguing him and screaming at him about the innovations he had made and all his complaints about Chassidism. The Alter Rebbe later said that those 3 hours were more painful to him than all the time he was in jail. Until the Chassidim finally were wondering what was going on. They had heard news that the Alter Rebbe was to be released, but time was passing. They got scared. So they thought maybe let's go check by the house, by the Misnagid, by the opponent that lives downstairs. Maybe they've heard news. Maybe they made new problems or whatever. Maybe they know what's going on. And when they came outside the window, they heard him screaming about Keser Amelech, about who gave you the right to make changes in Keser, in the Kedusha, that the Alter Rebbe changed from Na'aritzach and Benakdishach to Keser in his Nusach. So they understood that the Alter Rebbe was there. They broke down the door and rescued him from there. And because that was already after nightfall, therefore it's celebrated as 2 days. The 19th and 20th of Kislev are both celebrated as the days of redemption of the Alter Rebbe. But point being, that's a little bit about Yutas Kislev. There's a lot more to say, obviously, but just a little taste. But years later, the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, wrote a letter where he called this day of Yutas Kislev Rosh Hashanah LaChasidus. He said it's the day that v'chayos nafshenu nitan lanu, that the light and vitality of our souls was given to us, that this is a day that should be celebrated as Rosh Hashanah. There's a lot of fascinating stories connected to that letter, but that's for another time. Since then, Yutas Kislev is treated really as the Rosh Hashanah of Chassidus. If you look at the Alter Rebbe's Chassidus, his teachings and his popularity, as it were, definitely spread tremendously and increased after his redemption. And in fact, even the Chassidus he taught, for the most part, the teachings he taught before his arrest and liberation were short ideas, short, powerful thoughts that contained a lot, but that didn't really fully develop the concepts. The exception is Tanya. Tanya is the one thing that was printed or that was said before Petersburg that was in the style of after Petersburg. Once he came out of prison, he began to teach Chassidus to a much greater extent. The Mamarim, the discourses included in Likutei Torah and Torah and elsewhere, mostly are from after Petersburg. That's where he really began to develop the teachings of Chassidus and make them fully accessible and fully developed in the practical terms in the physical world, as it were.
How old was the Alter Rebbe when all this happened?
He was born in Kahas in Taf Kuf Hey, which is 5505. This happens in 5559. So he is 54 years old. So 53 years old when this takes place. At the time of their arrest and liberation, yeah. He continues teaching for another 15 years till his passing. So essentially, Yutas Kislev becomes the day that really is seen as the Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the Hasidic year. In fact, we wish each other L'shana tova b'limud ha'chasidus u'v'darkei ha'chasidus tekasevu v'sechasemu, like on Rosh Hashanah, but specifically with the emphasis on the ways of Chassidus and the teachings of Chassidus. Maybe we were written and inscribed for a good year, because this is seen as really the new year of everything related to Chassidus. The Frierdiker Rebbe then established a structure of learning Tanya. It split it up to learn a little piece every day to finish it each year. And the beginning day, the end and beginning, so Chassidim all around the world will finish Tanya the day after tomorrow on Thursday. Their annual study of Tanya, tens of thousands of people will finish the annual study of Tanya, and on Yutas Kislev will immediately begin again and start anew. So
I wasn't sure if I was right about this. Doesn't Chabad also do Chalukas Hashas on Yutas Kislev, or is that a different day?
Yes and no. Originally, the Alter Rebbe established that there should be a Chalukas Hashas, that every Hasidic community should split Shas between them, the Gemara between them, to be finished each year by different people taking a Masechta and all collectively finishing the entire Gemara. That he saw that as everybody in some way participating in completing the entire Torah each year, the entire oral tradition as well as embodied in the Talmud and the Gemara. It was originally later, after Yutas Kislev became the Rosh Hashanah of Chassidus, so it became the Chassidic tradition to do this split on Yutas Kislev. At some point later in Chabad history, I don't recall exactly when, but somewhere 3-4 generations later, they felt that Yutas Kislev was too busy of a day, because there's so much to do related to Chassidus and to Farbrengens and to everything related to the teachings of Chassidus, that they felt that there wasn't enough time to divide Shas at the Farbrengens. So they started doing it instead on Chaf Dalet Teves, on the anniversary of the Alter Rebbe's passing, which is in about a month later every year. But I don't recall if it was the Frierdiker Rebbe or the Rebbe reverted to doing it again on Yutas Kislev. The Rebbe talks about why that change was made and why it was changed back. But so now it is again the tradition on Yutas Kislev, that on Yutas Kislev at the Farbrengens, there's a sign-up sheet to take a Masechta that you'll learn in the coming year.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So as far as the Hadron, like the end of, I was very surprised actually. I mean, I guess I didn't remember this, that it ends with Zeh Leumat Zeh.
Okay, so I wasn't sure. First of all, were you learned all 5 sections or just?
Yeah, we went through the entire.
Okay, so you're finishing the end. Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if you were referring to Sefer Shalveinanim or to like the first section of Tanya, which is the original book of Tanya, or all 5 sections.
All 5 sections. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So like there must be some vort on why it ends with Zeh Leumat Zeh.
I could look into it for you. But if you're asking me to come up with something on the spot, really all of Tanya is about Zeh Leumat Zeh. In other words, Kabbalah existed before Chassidus, and Kabbalah explains godliness. Kabbalah is the science of God, as it were. But it's explained it as something removed. It's called the portion of Sod, of the secrets of the Torah. It explained it as something removed from the human experience, almost as a form of escapism. When you learn about the Sephiros and you learn about the worlds and the spiritual energies and lights, that's all removed from our personal experience, and is very abstract and not necessarily, doesn't necessarily translate into life. What the Alter Rebbe does in Tanya is he takes Pnimiyus HaTorah, he takes a section of Torah that by its nature is the study of God and therefore is not about, unlike Nigla de Torah, unlike the revealed aspects of Torah, which are about Hamaisa Asher Yasun, knowing what to do, although it contains an element of connection to godliness, but it's primarily about telling us how to live life as a Jew, right? What do I do? What happens if my ox gores your donkey, etc., right? How do I light Shabbos candles? How do I light Hanukkah candles, etc.? That's what Gemara's function is. That's what Halacha's function is. It's about telling us how to fight the battle of living life as a Jew in the physical world. Pnimiyus HaTorah, the inner dimension of Torah, Kabbalah and Chassidus, largely construed, deal with godliness. They deal with something removed from the physical world, not fighting the battle of the physical world, but simply the study of God. That's expressed in the pasuk Pada b'shalom nafshi, being redeemed in peace. In other words, while there's other facets of our lives, tefillah, prayer, where we're engaging with the animal soul, even more so gemilas chasadim, which largely includes involvement in the physical world, eating as a Jew, doing kindness, etc., doing mitzvahs. Those involve fighting a battle with the animal soul. Torah is not fighting a battle. Torah is engaging with the godly soul. It has an effect on the animal soul. And that's why it's referred to as Pedia B'Shalom, redemption and peace, right? A peaceful redemption. You're not even fighting a battle. You're bringing about a redemption without even needing to fight the war. In a sense, Pnimiyus HaTorah is even more so than the rest of Torah, because it's not even dealing with questions and answers for the most part. It doesn't deal with the physical world for the most part. It deals purely with godliness. Yet, the problem with that is that if you don't have Zeh Leumat Zeh, if you're not actually affecting the outside world, the negative, if you're not actually engaging in a transformative experience, then you're not actually changing anything. So much of Tanya, many of the chapters of Tanya, many of the essays in Kuntra Sachar that we just read, and so much else in Tanya is about that point, the advantage of Maisa, the advantage of action, that how, although spiritual connection is higher, but action has a greater effect, and is actually the point, is the purpose. Just the last couple of pieces, you read a whole thing about David's Zmiras Karluhu, about David referring to Torah as the Mirot, it's about elevating the sparks, transforming the physical world, dealing with the Tachton, dealing with Dira B'Tachtonim, creating a dwelling place for God, specifically in the lower realms. If you had to choose one fundamental theme of Tanya, and of Chabad Chassidus as a whole, that would be the central theme. The need to taking all of the spiritual ideas and spiritual activity and translating it into the physical world. And for that reason, I think it makes a lot of sense that Tanya ends with Zeh Leumat Zeh. The whole point of Tanya is that God created two parts in the world. He created a godly soul, but an animal soul and a godly soul, one opposite the other. And our role, our job is to engage in the transformative process of doing the hard work of actually engaging with the animal soul and transforming it. That he created Zelu Mazeh, there's a spiritual world and a physical world. There's heaven and earth, but they're not separate. That's all of what Tanya is saying. They're one opposite the other, and our job is to introduce harmony. Our job is to elevate. Our job is to transform. Our job is to be able to take that lowly and make it spiritual, and take the spiritual concepts and bring them down into reality. That Tanya does by translating it into Mibsari Echste Eloka, the study, as Kabbalah is the study of God. Chassidus is the study of what does God want from man? How does godliness affect me? How does a godliness affect a human being? Right? And by understanding our psychology, our makeup, the different emotional traits and intellectual traits, and the control that intellect has over emotion, as those other central themes that Tanya discusses, the Alter Rebbe is giving us the tools to take Chassidus, to take Kabbalah, to take spirituality, to take godliness, and translate it into our lives, translate it into actually changing who we are, changing our own selves. That Zelu Mazeh, one opposite the other, is exactly the tension that allows for actual transformation, that allows for actual achievement. And I think that connects back to the beginning of Tanya.
You got a question from our resident clown, Jan God. How can you both follow direction and also carve your own path?
Okay. I think that's inherent actually in exactly what we were talking about. If you study godliness in Kabbalah, there's no own path. Anybody that introduces their own path in Kabbalah has already missed the point, because the whole point of Kabbalah is the study of God. But the study of Chassidus is, what does God teach man? What does God demand of man? How do you translate godliness into your life? And that, while there could be a path to help you get there, there is a path to help you get there. That's what Tanya is all about. There's structure, there's definition that are universal to every human being. But at the same time, by its very nature, if the focus is on transformation, if the focus is on the effect that it has on me, then every single person is going to be different. My path is not your path. Each of us are going to have our own path, because what it's about is translating it into reality. So while the path is there, the path is to give you the tools, to give you the direction, to make sure you're not headed the wrong direction and not just completely confusing yourself. But the path is just giving you the tools to walk the road. You are the one who needs to walk the road, and your road is by its very nature going to be distinct and individual. There's a letter from the Frierdiker Rebbe where he spells out, I believe it's 10 or 12 aspects of what makes up the individual, where we're born and what talents we have and what qualities we have and the people we interact with and the specific experiences we've had and so on. And he goes through how each of those are fundamental parts of each person finding their own path in divine service. Because if you're not engaging the specifics of your circumstance, then you're not doing Zelu Mazeh. You're not engaging with the physical aspects of who you are. You're not translating it into actual reality, into your own path. The Rebbe actually highlights this because we're doing a hadran, so we have to connect the end to the beginning, because for the end immediately leads you back to the beginning. The Rebbe connects this actually to the Sharblat, to the title page of Tanya, and the point that the Alter Rebbe makes again in the introduction to Tanya. He says Tanya is about a study of Chassidus. It's Torah in general is not engaging with the world. It's Pada B'Shalom, it's B'diya B'Shalom, it's a path of peace, of redemption through peace, because it's not engaging with the negative. How much more so Chassidus, Kamprimius Torah, the inner dimension of the Torah, even more so, doesn't deal with the physical. Right? It's not about telling us what to do. It's about connecting to God on his own terms. Yet, what does the Alter Rebbe say in the title page of Tanya? What is the purpose of this book? He says, "Miyusad al pasuk." It's based on the verse, "Ki kara veilecha hadavar ma'od beficha v'vavcha la'aseisai." For the matter is very close to you in your mouth and in your heart to be able to do it in thought, speech, and action. Says the Alter Rebbe, the purpose of the book is levaer eichu karav ma'od, to explain how is it very close. B'derech harucha ksara be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach, in a long and short way with Hashem's help. There's many things to be said on that. the Rebbeim taught literally hours of teachings on just that short 2 lines, the title page. Usually everybody ignores that and just turns to the good parts, right? Ignores even the first few chapters, turns to the ending. Here, the Rebbeim teach that actually contains in every detail of that short sentence, there's many, many lessons that really explain what is Chassidus Chabad and what is the Alter Rebbe going to do in Tanya and how's he going to go about doing it and so on. But the Rebbe points out in one particular talk that here, what the Alter Rebbe is saying is that even though this is Pnimius HaTorah, even though this is the inner dimension of Torah, even though this isn't about telling us what to do, this is about connecting to God on His terms. Yet, he says, the focus of this book is going to be levar echu karav ma'it, to explain how is it very close to do. In other words, the focus of Tanya is not to remain a conceptual, abstract, intellectual work that you study and think about and ponder and compare to other philosophies and so on. The point of Tanya is to teach us how to live life as Jews, how to bring godliness into our lives, how to transform who we are in the physical world. And the Alter Rebbe sets that out right at the beginning of Tanya. He's taking the deepest mystical secrets of Torah and focusing them on what do they teach us? How does that change my life? How am I going to be different after I do this? In fact, one of my favorite Tanya stories, if I may digress again. There's
on the Tanya, it's not much of attention.
Rabbi Zalman Gurari, a chassid who lives in Crown Heights, who lives in New York, or lives, I'm not sure. One time the Rebbe sent him a particular mission, something he needed to do. He told him to travel, I believe it was to Montreal, to carry out some mission. It was a Friday. He went off to the airport, tried to get a flight to Montreal. It was Friday in the middle of the winter, a short day, and there was a snowstorm, and he's there. I've experienced this in the New York airports trying to fly to Toronto. Sometimes they get delayed, and it gets to the point where you come to the recognition that it's not going to work, and you're going back home and doing it after Shabbos. Rabbi Gurari had a concern. Apparently, there's somewhere in the Chidar, Rabbi Yehuda Chassid says something about that once you leave your house to accomplish a mission, you shouldn't return having not fulfilled it. So he was concerned that, okay, he has no choice. He's got to go back home for Shabbos, right? There's no way to get to fulfill his mission before Shabbos. But that means I'm coming back. I left to do something and I'm coming back without having accomplished it. So he called the Rebbe's office. He called the Maskiris, the Rebbe's secretariat, and he expressed that concern. And the Rebbe, I don't know if they asked and they conveyed the Rebbe's response, I believe. I don't think the Rebbe got on the phone. But the Rebbe responded. He said, if that's what you're worried about, I have a simple solution. He said, sit down and study a parak of Tanya. Because once you study a parak of Tanya, you're not the same person. So therefore, the person coming home isn't the same person that left to do the mission. So that will allay your concern of returning unfulfilled. But that's what Tanya is about. The purpose of Tanya is not to remain abstract and intellectual and theoretical. It's to tell us how to live life as Jews, to tell us how to engage with our intellect and our emotions and the different components of our intellect and the different aspects of our emotions, and how to ensure that the intellect controls the emotions, how to ensure to achieve mastery over ourselves, over our animal soul, the fight, the battle between the godly soul and the animal soul, how it translates into thought, speech, and action, how it translates into joy, how it translates into loving a fellow Jew, how it translates into an appreciation of the impact of mitzvot and the effect that the mitzvahs have in the physical world, etc., etc. Those are the themes of Tanya. In other words, it's not a textbook; it's a guidebook that is intended to be used as such, to translate into reality. Levar echu karav ma'od. So, with that understanding, again, I'd have to look up to find a true answer. Maybe I'll be lucky and the real answer will be something along these lines too. But I think that it makes a lot of sense that Tanya ends with Zelu Mazdeh, because that's the entire point of the book, to teach us how to engage to take the piece of Torah and translate it into the battle of living life in the physical world and transform it in a peaceful way.
You impressed Jan God, which is a hard thing to do. I should write a psychology paper on how listening to a good rabbi is like listening to music.
Puts you to sleep. Yeah, I know.
I know you have to go soon. Ben, did you have any questions you wanted to ask?
I mean, really, I mean, the stories and the information that you conveyed already kind of answer or just like provide a lot of fruitful food for thought. So that's been great. Yeah, I mean, you connecting the Zeh Lumat Zeh and bringing that, giving that as an idea for the Tanya as a whole, that was beautiful. So I really enjoyed that. I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking about it as someone that is, I guess, learning Chassidus is something new. I mean, I finished the Tanya. This is the first time that I finished Tanya. I'm wondering, how do you, and you said this is for people, this is for us to understand how to live our life as Jews and how to do it well. So I guess my question is maybe two questions, but really they're the same, of like, what is the significance of, like, why do I need to read this every year? And the same, a similar question is, okay, now that I've read it, what do I, is there a cheat sheet now that I can use in my everyday life that I can, like, okay, how do I apply Tanya here, or I have to apply it there, or do I need to go to the book every time?
That's a good question. So I think, the question about why I need to do it every year is, if you see it as life, as living life, as tools for life, and with constant, because it's godly, not human developed, therefore there's always more depth. But not just is there more depth. Every day, as somebody asked earlier about charting your own path, every day you're a different person. Because all the experiences and how you're feeling and what you're doing and how inspired you are creating a different, unique mixture, which makes every day unique. It's why we do the daily prayers every day, even though they're the same prayers, but they're different every day. Because every day you're approaching, they might be the same, but your experience of them is going to be different and should be different every single day. I think the same is true definitely for Tanya, that because it's intended as, it's not just a work of philosophy. If it was a work of philosophy, you're right. Learn it once, twice, maybe a few years later, come back to it after you have a deeper depth. But we see it not as a work of philosophy, but as a way of life. And therefore, yes, every day you're going to learn it, you're learning it, you're approaching it slightly differently, and you're going to translate it into your life differently. And therefore, it's going to have a different impact on you. As far as the cheat sheet, there are, by the way, a lot of great works nowadays that summarize Tanya or that take practical ideas. There's a book, I forget by who, A Practical Tanya. There's books by Rabbi Steinsaltz, several books on Tanya that really make it accessible. And 13 Petaled Roses, essays he wrote that take their ideas from each of the chapters of Tanya. There's a great JLI course, if for those who have a nearby Chabad house teaching, called Soul Maps, which really does an incredible job of taking the 53 chapters of Tanya and looking at them as a map of different elements, or so breaking it down into sort of the central themes and focusing on the messages they're teaching, rather than getting lost sometimes in the Kabbalistic terminology and the deeper philosophy that often happens when we try to learn it directly. So there's a lot of great cheat sheets out there, as it were. Even, by the way, that Tzemach Tzedek, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, wrote a book, Kitzurim Va'aris B'Sefer Tanya, basically summaries of the chapters of Tanya. In other words, he had your question, apparently, that he felt that it was necessary for there to be a way to make sure that this is kept easily accessible and present and relevant in life. But I think also, one of the incredible things about Torah in general, and I think you see this in Chassidus even more so. The explanation given in Chassidus for this is because it's lights. take two candles that are completely separate, but put them next to each other, their light merges and creates a deeper light, a more, a brighter or a different hue, a deeper experience of light. Every time you learn something in Torah, the Gemara says, Divrei Torah, aniyim b'makam zev, ashirim b'makam acher. The words of Torah are poor in one place and wealthy in another place. In other words, each piece of Torah that we learn doesn't just add another nugget of knowledge. It deepens our understanding, like I said before about the Vav, how we thought through the whole Tanya, as it is with the Vav and as it is without the Vav. The truth is, every part of Torah, it affects the experience we have, not just of it, but of all the parts of Torah, but of all the things we've already learned or all the things we will learn. Because the Torah, as we're learning it with that piece, is different than the Torah as we're learning it without that piece. Every time we learn an additional little bit of Torah in general, that's true that when we come to learn that same piece the next time, it's with a deeper understanding because now it's connected to so many other things. And I would say in Pnimius Torah and Chassidus, that's even more so. There isn't, Tanya is the closest thing that we have to a textbook in the Chassidus, right? To an organized, structured, step-by-step learning process. But for the most part, Chassidus is made up of mamarim, of light. And it's scattered in all these different places. And every time you learn a maimer, any Chassidic discourse anywhere from any of the Rebbes, and you go back and look at a chapter of Tanya, you see something in it that you never saw before. Because now you have a deeper appreciation and a deeper understanding, and as well as every mimer does that to every other mimer. So to me, the question isn't, why do we need to learn Tanya again and go through it again the other year? Question is, how do we manage without learning all of it every day, right? But unfortunately, we're human beings in a physical world with restrictions of time, place, and manner, and therefore we. Sorry, that was a thing about the college protests, a whole different world. And therefore we're limited in our capacity to revisit. So we could only revisit a little bit each day, but living it, being involved in it, making it a part of our lives by being every day doing a little bit that makes it part of what our life is about, part of how we're living our life. And I think definitely, the sooner we begin again, the more depth we're going to see. Now that you've learned through Tanya, chapter 1 is going to be a whole different chapter 1.
Yeah.
So next, we're thinking of Derech Mitzvosecha.
I apologize. I had promised you to look. I think I have somewhere an English translation of some parts of it, at least, that somebody sent me once. I have to look through my bookcases and see if I could locate that for you.
So Chabad.org has lessons in Derech Mitzvosecha, but it's not the entire thing. And you said specifically Mitzvahs Iyun HaTefillah.
Shorish mitzvahs hatfilah. It's a good starting place. Although if they have translated mitzvahs hamanas alakus is a very fundamental, deep thing. The nature of belief in God. Shorish mitzvahs hatfilah is a very. It's one of the classic texts that are often studied early in one's journey of learning Chassidus because of how fundamental it is.
The other option is to actually do the entire Derech Mitzvosecha out of Derech Mitzvosecha. Now, I don't know if Ben and I have a strong enough Hebrew to do that. You think that's a possibility? You don't think that's a possibility?
Start. See where you get. There may be parts that are challenging. Look, you know what? When I can tell you, still, when I learn Chassidus, you come to a line somewhere it's beyond your capacity, right? You learn Likutei Torah or Torah. The Rebbe's Mamarim are more, fully developed concepts and so on. But the earlier Chassidus has a lot of lines that are referring to some Kabbalistic concept. And it's part of the nature of Chassidus is that it's humbling. It actually explains that the difference between Lechem min ha'aretz and Lechem min ha'shamayim, the difference between the manna and real bread is that the manna made people hungry. God made us hungry by feeding us the man, because bread from the heavens makes one whets one's appetite, while bread from the earth satiates. In Chassidus, it's explained that that's the difference between nigla, revealed parts of Torah, and pnimius Torah, the inner dimension of Torah. The revealed parts of Torah satiate us, but therefore can sometimes lead us to ego if we don't approach it properly, because we understand it and it's comprehensible, and it seems to us that we're fully getting it, even though, well, really it's divine wisdom that's beyond our capacity.
That's interesting, because for me it was the absolute opposite. I always had an easier time with Likutei Torah than the Rebbe's Maimarim.
Okay, you're maybe you have a more Kabbalistic soul. The nature of Kabbalah and Chassidus in general is that it leaves you hungry. It humbles, because you're never it's clear that however much you understand, there's more to the pictures. In Gemara, you could learn it and think you're getting the full depth. When you learn a Maimer, you know that you're not getting everything, right? You know that there's more to the story, that there's a depth here you don't understand, but you're understanding whatever you're understanding on that level at that point. I'd say dive in, you get what you get. Again, there's some of the mitzvahs. I believe it's minui melech, appointing a king, amanas alakus, belief in God, cherish mitzvahs tefillah, definitely. One on Eved Ivri. There's some that are sort of very accessible and fundamental. Others are more esoteric and may have more gaps in at least in my understanding, if I learn it. And not going to assume for you. So I would say definitely dive in and do what you can. And if you need, there's always the call a friend feature.
You're too busy to call a friend, Rabbi.
Whatever, me, somebody, whatever. There's always somebody who'll make time.
When I started going to Chabad at USC, I was the only one. I got all your attention. Now it's this huge thing. Everybody's constantly wanting your time. It's impossible to talk to you anymore.
Islam. Speaking of which, I promised somebody I'd call them back.
Thank you for your
Mazel tov on finishing Tanya. That's an incredible accomplishment. You should be extremely proud, not chas v'shalom, proud of yourselves, because we don't do ego, as you by now. But after learning Tanya, certainly you understand bittul is the ultimate goal. But that doesn't mean you can't be proud of your actions. It's an incredible achievement. May that light, the light of Tanya, as we're entering into Yotes Kislev, illuminate every facet of your lives, materially and spiritually. And Lashana Taiva B'limoda Chassidus V'darkei Chassidus Tekasevu V'seichasemu. May you be written and inscribed for a good year in the study of Chassidus and the behavior in the pathways of Chassidus, as may we all be, until we merit the ultimate purpose of Chassidus, which is the true essence, the revelation of Mashiach. May it be immediately in our days.
Amen. Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Have a wonderful day. Be well.
So that was Rabbi Wagner.
Quite the guy.
Yeah. You want
to?
What do you want to do? Do you want to do lessons in Derech Mitzvosecha, or you want to try to dive into actual Derech Mitzvosecha?
I was looking at it briefly to see lessons. Yeah, has I think it starts with Ahavat Israel. It doesn't have Mitzvat Ahavat Israel, Vidui v'Tshuva, תגלך מצורע, ברכת כהנים, קידוש, חילול השם, מינוי מלך, ארמנה ודקות. Yeah.
So, I mean, there's this on, I think this is this actually looks like it's a translation.
Right, are you
there's this.
Yeah.
From here on Hebrew Books. It's a
this is the original.
Yeah. I don't know if this is the original. I thought it would be the original. No, this is a translation. Okay. I didn't realize. I thought let me see if I can find search title Hebrew derech. My typing isn't great. Derech.
Because he wants us to do some Steinsaltz.
Steinsaltz? Like what Steinsaltz?
Petal Rose.
I mean, I read through it. I wasn't. It wasn't.
I never read. I don't know. Yeah.
I was not greatly impressed. Why is it not showing me Derech Mitzvosecha? Did I misspell Mitzvosecha? Let me see. Hebrew books. And all these people are texting me. There we go. Derech Mitzvosecha. There we go. This is the actual thing.
Mm-hmm.
And let me pull this up. So Derech Mitzvosecha Mitzvat Priya Revia. That's the first one in the actual book. And then there are Hosafot.
That would be tough.
You think we can do this? Pruvu chulu. Inyan mitzvat priya revia. Hine amru razal in nida. Shlosha shutfin ba'adam avam. Mazria loven. Shemimenu atzamot v'gidim v'tzipornaim. V'moach shebarosho. V'loven shebe'ayin. Em mazria odem shemimenu or basar chulu. Hakadosh Baruch Hu noten bo ruach u'neshama chulu. V'hinei noda al pi ma shekatuv v'neshamot ani asiti. In Isaiah, I have made things. I mean, so far I think we're doing it, right? Sheyesh ba'adam shnei nafashot. נפש הבהמית המתלבש בדם האדם להחיותו וגם היא שכליות להשכיל כל מיני חוכמה שבעולם ונמשכת מלמעלה מכוחות רוחניים הוא בחינת פני שור שבמרכבה ופני אדם לארבעתם.
The problem is that you will need to do this, and we will. So I mean, we'll need to kind of translate it as well.
Yeah, I mean, do we need to translate it exact, like word for word?
I mean, it'll just be our responsibility to translate it in a way that it is appropriate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think. Yeah, yeah. What do you think? I mean, I'm guessing you have an easier time reading this than with all the whatchamacallits, with all the nikud. No, this looks like mostly like modern Hebrew so far. No,
it does look. I mean, yeah, it is. The Hebrew seems like I can read it. The only thing is the change in the abbreviations.
Right.
It's the only thing that sometimes gets me, but this is not. I mean, we can work with that. I'm down to do Derech Mitzvotecha like this. Yeah, for me it was either doing this or going outside of.
Chazi says no.
Rashi Tevot, yeah.
The Rashi Tevot will be too annoying. You need to explain the Merkava.
Right, yeah, right. Let's explain the Merkava.
Well, I mean, lessons in Derech Mitzvosecha, and that leads to Daniel. What's wrong with Daniel? What do you have against Daniel? Lessons.
The only thing that I was thinking about is either going outside of Hasidus and doing Mesilat Yesharim.
Outside of Hasidus.
Mesilat Yesharim, Rachmana litzlan. It's not that far from
Doing what?
Mesilat Yesharim.
I do have Mesilat Yesharim, and I do have Mesilat Yesharim.
What is that? Which one?
It's I think it's Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan's translation. No, English translation, Shraga Silverstein.
Okay.
Feldheim.
Yeah, I have like a small art scroll, but yeah, it's fine.
You have an art scroll, Mesilat Yesharim?
Yeah, it's like a small.
Huh. This is pretty small, but it's Feldheim. I bought this many years ago and never used it.
Yeah.
Because that's just the type of guy I am.
I think the art scroll. I don't know who made it. Is it? I don't know if they used Aryeh Kaplan. Probably not, but I don't know.
Isur Sinat Israel Mitzvat Ahavat Israel. I don't know. Chezi doesn't like Derech Mitzosecha, or we would have done Derech Mitzosecha. What can I say? We have time. Well, Chezi, I mean, well, usually we do it later in the day, so it might be too late for you. But yeah.
Chezi and I also need to go back to the Rambam at some point.
GN asks, was that the Father Stephen DeYoung of Judaism? My rabbi, unfortunately, my rabbi is not well known outside of Chabad of USC, which is one synagogue. He should be better known all throughout the world, but actually he has many brothers, and his brothers are far more well known. He also has uncles and cousins and all kinds of people. Ben, I'm coming back in 2 weeks. Rambam 4.8. Where were you guys on Rambam?
4.8. Rambam 4.8. This is some kind of code that I need to decipher now. 4.8.
Which Rambam were you doing? Mishnah Torah?
No, we are doing
Moreh Nevuchim?
No, what are we doing? We are doing you see now Shmona Prakim.
Oh, you're on chapter
4 out of 8. Okay, is it 4 out of 8 or are we at 3? I don't know. I would need to look at that.
Shmona Prakim.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
8 chapters.
That's a good one too. That's a good one too.
Yeah.
If weiß nicht.
So I mean, we could do. So if we want to stay in Chassidus, I would also be interested in doing like Torah or Likutei Torah.
Torah Or and Likutei Torah. I mean, I love Torah Or and Likutei Torah have always been my favorites. We could even try to be good and do the Parsha, but the problem is each Parsha would probably take us several weeks.
So yeah, okay, yeah, that's.
Or we could actually do Torah Or on the holidays. I mean, we could start with like Hanukkah is coming up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Are we on for this coming Tuesday?
I don't even know.
It's the night before Nittel. I mean, you can't.
I do. Yeah, I do have family here, but I should be fine. Wow.
By the way, how's the baby?
He's doing pretty good. I can't hear him right now, so that means everything.
Well, it looks like the scrib is behind you. Is he asleep?
No, he's not really using this. The scrib is pending.
Oh, you guys, he's still in the bedroom with you guys?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. But no, he's doing well. He's eating. He's progressing.
As he says, we are now starting chapter 4. Yeah.
Okay.
We're doing a prayer series, and I want to do a verse-by-verse reading of Parshat Bereshit.
Who's we?
I don't know. Verse by verse. I mean, my after my video with Father Stephen, my Genesis 1 video, which is 5 hours long of me going letter by letter on Bereshit, is the most popular video on my channel. I don't know if still is it. Let me see. What is the most popular video on my channel? Analytics. In the last year, number one was, wow, it wasn't Genesis 1. Genesis 1 isn't even in the top 10 anymore. Nobody likes Genesis 1 anymore, apparently.
Old news, Genesis 1.
Apparently. Yeah. Seems like a lot of people, I won't even bother. Wow. The one video I didn't want to be number one on my channel. There we go. It is what it is. It is what it is.
Probably something about destroyed logic.
Something I wish even that. Yeah.
Okay.
It's all good.
So okay, what decision comes out of this?
The decision is, since you're the one who's married with children, you get to make the decision. What are we doing?
Okay. I think I mean, I know that we just spoke to Chabad Rabbi, but I'm leaning towards Mesilat Yesharim.
Mesilat Yesharim is it. The question becomes, what do I show on screen?
That's. I mean, we could show. I don't know what
on Safaria. There's there should be. They should have Mesilat Yesharim. They must.
Yeah, and if we have if we have another,
did they put it under thing Hashem Yerachem Musar?
Probably.
Hashem Yerachem Aleinu. Mesilat Yesharim. There it is under Musar. God have mercy on our souls. Okay, so we could we could in fact do Mesilat Yesharim on from Safaria.
Who is the translator of Sebag? Okay, yeah.
Sebag? This is not this. I mean, it's a different translation than mine, but it's all good.
You have another one? But I mean, we have.
I mean,
the
actual book I have is this one. Is the about this text, Rabbi Sebag. I don't know who Rabbi. Current translation, dafyomireview.com.
I think when Rabbi Gottlieb goes through when he starts his series on Mesilat Yesharim, he says which translation he thinks is the best.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, we can keep that in mind, and even if we go through Safari just to show it on the screen, we can just between all of our translations, we'll be able to make the right notes.
We'll figure it out.
But yeah, I mean, I'm leaning towards this. If we, so I'm happy to do this, unless we want to do any
it's all your choice.
Yeah.
If
I have two other
classes,
so I'm good.
Yeah. Okay. And Chezi approves of Mesilat Yesharim. I guess Mesilat Yesharim is it. I'm trying to get Yosef to join, and we will be reading Rabbi Shirky's new Pirush to Genesis. Okay. With Safaria, if you share the link, can you also give the title each time where you are? I had to search from the main page with Tanya. Okay. Martin Buber, we're not going to do. That's for sure. I'm not a huge fan of Martin Buber. You may have recognized. Okay, so I guess we're doing Mesilat Yesharim next week.
Yeah, I think so. I have family here, but I think
we can wait a week or so.
I think it should be fine. I think it should be fine.
We'll figure it out. You're gonna have to make a thumbnail, make it all beautiful. You're gonna have to figure everything out. Yeah,
I'll do it by then. It's good.
Okay.
Good times.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. I am going to end this stream.